Hey, this is Seth Parnell, minister of the Portia Church of Christ, and this is another episode of the Midweek Bible Study. This is episode 67, I believe. It's good to have you here. Hope things are going well. Hope things are going good over in your part of the world. I want to remind you that if you have any questions or comments, about our study tonight or about anything that we've studied in the past, please feel free to get in contact with us. We would love to answer any questions or clear up any misunderstandings. We want to arrive at a better understanding of God's Word. That's one of our goals here at the Midweek Bible Study. We want to encourage, we want to support, and we want to be someone that lifts each other up. And so hopefully we can do that tonight. We also want to invite you to come see us. Right now we are meeting at the Portia Church of Christ. We're meeting on Sunday mornings at 10 and 11 on Sunday morning, and then on Sunday night we meet at 6 o'clock, and Wednesday night at 6 o'clock as well. And so if you are in the area, around those times, we would love to see you, love to talk with you, would love to sing and listen to the Word of God with you. We enjoy people who come to visit us at Portia, and so hope that you can do that if you're someone that is in the area, or if you're someone that is able, or even if you live in the Portia area. We'd love to see you as well. Hope you take advantage of that if you can. But tonight we are going to be in Judges chapter 4. We don't have a guest tonight because originally I was supposed to be at a church camp this week, but the plans had to change. We had to cancel that because of the pandemic that we're going through, and so we're going to be by ourselves tonight. But we have a couple of people who've already chimed in. We have Tom and Billy Gale. They are here. It's good to have you guys. Hope you had a good day. Hope you stayed out of the heat. Didn't get too hot because it's been a pretty warm one today. And we got Janet Deloche. It's good to have you here as well. Hope things are going good your way. And we appreciate all of you being here. Like I said, Judges chapter 4 is going to be our text for tonight. It's going to be a pretty short episode. We're not going to go too far in depth into the story. The story of Deborah is something that you could spend a couple sermons on, because there's a lot of good things in the story that you could draw out. But we're just going to take a short glance at it tonight. And so to get us started, if you have your Bibles in Judges chapter 4, this is how this story begins. This story actually picks up right after the death of Ehud. Remember Ehud? He was the judge that was left-handed. He was the one who assassinated, the king that was oppressing them. King I think it's Eglon, I think. And Ehud was a great leader. He turned out to be. He turned out to be a pretty good leader. But basically, we'll read that things kind of fell apart after Ehud died. And after he was gone, things kind of went back to where they were before Ehud got there. In Judges chapter 4, in verse 1, it says, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagonim. And when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. And we have the story set here. This man by the name of Jabin, who is the king of Canaan, he is someone who is oppressing Israel at this moment. That Israel was victim to that cycle, that spiritual cycle that runs all throughout the Old Testament. They obeyed Ehud. They thrived under Ehud. They were people that looked to God and was faithful to God's commands when Ehud was leading them. But what happened when Ehud left, when he died, and they had to chart their course on their own? They turned back to idols. They turned back to paths that were apart from God. They could not, stay focused on God and stay focused on His commands. They always had this tendency, to go back, this tendency to kind of to slide back, where when they should. And because of this, we know that the spiritual, decisions that these people made, often had consequences, because God told them in the book of Deuteronomy. He said, if you follow me, if you follow my commandments, then I will bless you. I will be there for you. I will fight your battles for you. But if you reject me, then I'm going to separate myself from you. I'm not going to be with you. And that gave Israel a choice of what they were going to do. And God made it really clear, the consequences of each choice. He said, if you reject me, then I'm not going to fight for you. But if you obey my commands, if you love me with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, then I will be there for you. I will not, abandon you. And so when we find that the people did reject God, they did fall victim to this cycle. What happens? This Canaanite king comes in, and he just takes the entire area. He tells them what to do. He takes what he wants. He does anything that he wants to these people, because he has that that superiority. It makes special mention of the amount of chariots that he has. It says he had 900 chariots of iron, which was pretty significant for this time. That was provided a pretty big tactical advantage for an army to have an iron chariot. If you drive one of those through a line of soldiers, that could be pretty deadly. It was a very effective tool of war that they had at that time, a chariot of iron. And they had 900 of these things. This was a powerful army. They didn't get to oppress Israel just by being nice or asking nicely. They had a very strong and a very powerful army, and so they're basically able to do what they want. But then the story shifts down to a woman by the name of Deborah in verse 4, in Judges chapter 4 and verse 4, where it says, "Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel, in the hill country of Ephraim. And the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to them, Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go, gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun. And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon. With his chariots and his troops, I will give him into your hand." Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, then I will not go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go." And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory. For the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." And then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went with him. And so we find, Deborah is she's found, judging the people of Israel. And she is holding the position of a judge. And we're familiar with people such as, like we mentioned before, such as Ehud, such as Samuel, such as Tola and Jair, and maybe even Samson. Even though Samson, he's kind of a more of a unique case. He was more of a deliverer of Israel than he was an actual judge. But Deborah is here, and she sits under this tree, and she hears the cases, and they bring these cases before her, and she judges between them. And she serves in this leadership role, which was maybe a little bit unusual at the time, considering the customs and everything that was in place. But yet everyone respected her word. They respected her judgment so much that they would travel to her to have her decide their case. And so she is there in this position, and she summons this man by the name of Barak, and she gives Barak, specific instructions. And not because not only was Deborah a judge, but what else does it say she was? It says that she was a prophetess. She was someone who could give, the message, of God and proclaim it. She could proclaim the message of God. And so she summons Barak and she says, this is what God has told you to do. Go get 10,000 men from the tribes of Zebulun and the tribes of Naphtali, and go and get ready to fight, because God's going to deliver this army into your hand. It's a pretty, a pretty bold statement, because if this is something that she is wrong about, then it's going to have severe consequences for Israel. But one thing that we can be assured of is that God, He does not lie. God does not deceive. God does not, tell mistruths. But God, told her in this message, and she relayed it on to Barak. And she told Barak, this is what you need to do. And this is what God has called you to do. And Barak, he had his, like we said, he has his reservations as well. I mean, like we said, if this was something that was, if they were wrong, some pretty hefty consequences. And so this would mean probably not only, Barak's life, but the life of all his men as well. And so he says, I'll go, but only if you go with me. If you're not going to go, then I'm sure not going to go. We don't know how familiar Barak was with, Deborah. He might have been just, testing the waters to see if, how much she believed in this message. It's one thing to tell someone else to do something, and it's another thing, to go do it yourself. If you go do it yourself, that means you fully believe, that, this is true. And that may have been what been going through, Barak's mind. And so he says, if you're there, Deborah, then I'm going to be there. And so if she agrees, and she ends up going with him. Like I said, she wasn't trying to deceive him, but she said, I know this is what God has told us to do, and He's going to deliver this powerful Canaanite army into your hand. It's going to be quite a battle. The story then kind of shifts. When you read throughout this chapter, it's kind of a weird shift, but it plays a big part later on in the story. It talks about a man by the name of Heber the Kenite. And it says, now Heber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched the tent as far away as the oak in Zanim, which is near Kadesh. And then it goes back to the story between Sisera and who was the general of the Canaanite army, and Barak. It goes back to this battle. It takes a little detour there to talk about Heber the Kenite. But like I said, this would play a big role later on in this story. But they call out the army, and they come out and they fight these Canaanites. And true to His word, Israel wins. They are victorious, and they end up routing these individuals. The Bible makes special mention that this battle took place near a river, and it's possible that the terrain in which they fought took away the advantage of the chariots, and the chariots maybe weren't quite as effective as they could be. They may have gotten bogged down in mud or rough terrain where they weren't as useful as they were on flat ground, or maybe on a suitable battlefield. For whatever reason, they could not defeat Israel in this case, but God was fighting for them. And Paul says in the book of Romans, he says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And this is certainly true in this case, because during this battle, this general, this man by the name of Sisera, he ends up leaving his chariot. He gets out of his chariot and he flees on foot. And if you ask yourself, which is faster, a man running on foot, or a horse, pulling a chariot. Well, it's going to be the horse. And so the fact that he leaves his chariot probably means that the chariots were compromised in some sort of way. They weren't able to be used to their full effectiveness. And so he is leaving on foot. And he would end up going to see to one of his allies, one of his national allies. You remember when the story kind of detoured to this man by the name of Heber the Kenite? The story detours to him for a very, very big reason, because this is where Sisera runs to. He runs, to this village, and when he gets there, the wife of Heber, a woman by the name of Jael, she sees him coming and she invites him into her tent, and she hides him under a rug, and she gives him some milk, to drink, and he gives her instruction. He says, "If anyone comes looking for me, you know, say no one's here." You basically saying you haven't seen a thing. And so she agrees, and uh, she puts him under that rug. And if you had fought a battle all day, and you drunk some milk, which is good for making you sleepy sometimes, and you got in a comfortable position, you're liable to fall asleep. And this is what happened to this man here, sister. He quickly falls asleep. Being someone who would help him escape, instead of being someone who would turn over, this man, to Barak and to his Israelite army. This woman, she takes a tent peg and she does it herself, and she kills the man, right then and there. And she drives the tent peg, the Bible says, through his temple, and it says, so he died. She was someone who took matters, into her own hands, and really, did something that the Israelite army, could not. And she took out the commander, of this Canaanite army. And so it's interesting to see this story, of Deborah, and all the things that she goes through, and the role that she plays in the history of Israel. And like I say, this is not the end of her story. If you go to chapter 5, you have the song of Deborah and Barak, where she sings a song that lasts for around 31 verses in chapter 5. The entirety of Judges chapter 5 is dedicated to this song, and and uh, and from what they sang for this victory. And for all we knew, and for all we know from the information that we have in the scriptures, the people of God, they were faithful. They were faithful to God all throughout the time of Deborah, and all throughout the time that she was a judge for them. And she provided them with great victory. We need to be a people that like her, that is willing to serve God, in any capacity. You might not be a judge. You might not be someone who is called, to to lead in that manner. But what if you are? What if that is a position that you are put in? Are you ready to serve God, where He puts you? Some people think, well, if I just get to this specific a situation, if I can just get to this point in my life, if I can just get to this point in the future, then I can serve God. But why not serve God now? Why not serve God where He has put you, right now? Why can't you find a way in which to enrich His kingdom, right now? You know, you don't have to wait for some distant point in the future in order to make that happen. But you can do it, at whatever point in life you are, whatever situation God has put you in. You can find a way in order to serve God. Whether that means you become a leader like Deborah, or that means you become a servant, like Barak. You can do some great things, for God, and you don't have to wait, for that, because as we see here in this case, when God promises victory, when He promises you victory, Does God deliver? Does God make good on his promises? He sure did in this story. There was not any doubt who won this battle, but Barak and Deborah won because God said that they would, because God fought on their side. In the struggles that we go through in this life, with all the bad things that maybe tend to pop up and may threaten our happiness, maybe our spiritual healthiness, who do we want on our side? Who do we want fighting with us? Some people put their trust in the things they have. Some people put their trust in an individual. But if you really want to succeed as a Christian, you need to have God on your side. You need Him fighting for you. And God has said, Jesus makes a statement in the Gospels. He says, "I desire all men to be saved and come to the obedience of the truth." If you want God to be someone that is on your side, what do you have to do first? First, you need to go to His side. First, you need to obey what He has called you to do, and then you'll be someone that makes yourself a servant to Him. Because who does God say is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? It's not the most talented. It's not the most good looking. It's not the most it's not the richest person, but it's the servant. It says the servant is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're called to do as people, as individuals, as people who are trying to make our way through this world. Going to end up failing you if you put your sole trust in them, because they don't have the strength to fight for you like God does, and like God you can. He can take a person who is broken inside, and He can make them a strong fighter for the kingdom. You could see, that these people, on a normal day, the Canaanites would probably, run right over the Israelites. They probably wouldn't even be close. But like we said, because God was with them, the result is totally different. And it's the same true for us. You may be trying to do things on your own, but what you can do, what a person can do, has its limitations. We can only do so much. Sometimes we need help, and we need someone who can do things that no one else can. And we know that the God that we serve can do just that. And not only did He create this earth that we live in, but He also created us, and He created a path to salvation for us. We can have salvation under the name of God if we come to Him, and if we are someone that is obedient. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter really what situation you're in. As we see here with Deborah, there's not a whole lot of judges. There's not any judges that we read about in the book of Judges that are women. But yet Deborah is someone who steps up, and she plays this role and plays it well. And so, no matter where you are, no matter what situation you're in, you can do some good things. And if God is for you, then you can do some great things. We always got to remember what Jesus says in the garden. He says, when he prayed to God, what did Jesus say? He said, "Not my will, but yours be done." When we talk about God fighting for us, that doesn't mean that God's going to support anything that we do. It doesn't mean that God's going to support me when I go out and do whatever I want. But it means that if we're someone that fights for God, if we're someone who serves God, He's going to be there for us. He's going to help us get through this life that is oftentimes pretty tough. It's oftentimes full of struggle. But I hope this is a story that encourages you and uplifts you. And like I said, you can take a whole lot deeper dive into this story, than what we've done here tonight. Because there's a lot of good things in this story that that you could open up and that you could have a broader conversation about. But I think we're going to stop our study there for tonight. If you have any suggestions, if you have any if you have any suggestions about topics or passages that you would like to see discussed on this Bible study, then please feel free to let us know. You send us a message. Get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we would love to maybe address some of the questions that you have. Like I said, we'll have other people on here who are smarter than me that can help answer those questions, and then hopefully we can come to a better understanding of the truth of the gospel. But as I always say, if we can help you with anything that's spiritual, please get in contact with us. If you have any questions about what we do here or about the Portia Church of Christ, feel free to get in contact with us as well. You know, we want to do what's best to lift up the people that are around us. Hopefully, we do that. We will be back here next Thursday night, at least. Yeah, at least we should be back here next Thursday night. We may have to take a week off, but we'll see. And I'll be sure to let you know in advance. But we should be back here next Thursday, and we'll have Clint Lambert with us. He's someone who is he has a background in counseling, and so I know that you'll enjoy what he has to say. He's a pretty good guy. But until then, I hope that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night. I hope that you finish up the week strong. And I hope you can go out and be the light of the world. I'll see you next time.